Oh, there. I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Natalie Merari Dueñas, and today I will be doing a presentation for History 1302. I will be talking about the Marshall Plan and its impact after World War II. For my title, I will be naming it The Marshall Plan and Rebuilding Europe and Containing Communism. After World War II, Europe was left in a very terrible state of devastation with many destroyed cities and struggling economies. The Marshall Plan was actually created by the United States to help rebuild struggling economies. The Marshall Plan was, like I said, built to rebuild Europe and stuff like that. However, it was not just about helping. It was also a strategic effort to prevent the spread of communism and increase US influence during the Cold War. Europe after World War II. To understand the Marshall Plan, we first need to also look at what Europe was like after World War II. Many of the countries were completely and absolutely destroyed. Cities were ruined, industries had stopped working, and millions of people were left without homes or even jobs. And I can imagine how many other stuff they lost. There were also major shortages of food, fuel, and basic supplies, maybe even soap, or I don't know what they could have had back then. Because of this instability, many people in Europe began to turn towards communism, which promised equality and government support. This, on the other hand, though, it started to worry the United States, which wanted to stop communism from spreading some more. What is the Marshall Plan? The Marshall Plan was proposed in 1947 by Secretary of State George Marshall, but it was officially begun in 1948 under President Harry Truman. The plan provided about $13 billion in aid to Western European countries. This aid included money, food, machinery, and other resources needed to rebuild economies. The goal was to help European countries recover quickly and become stable once again. The United States offered aid to multiple of these European countries, including France, West Germany, and the United Kingdom. Country used this money to rebuild factories, improve transportation systems, and restart production. As a result of this, economies began to grow again, and living conditions improved after this happened. However, not all countries accepted this aid. The Soviet Union rejected the Marshall Plan and prevented Eastern European countries from participating as well. One important primary source is George Marshall's speech in 1947, where he said, "Europe must have substantial additional help or face economic, social, and political deterioration of a very grave character. This comes to show how serious the situation was at that time. It also shows how the United States justified getting involved, presenting the plan as necessary to prevent further crisis. But at the same time, it also supports the idea that the US had strategic motives, not just the humanitarian ones, but literally also strategic ones. Cold War connection. The Marshall Plan played a major role in the early Cold War by helping Western European recover. These by helping Western European recover, the United States strengthened capitalist governments and reduced the appeal of communism, while increasing tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. On the other hand, though, the Soviet Union saw this as a threat and refused to participate in this. This increased tensions between the US and the Soviet Union and deepened the division between Eastern and Western Europe, which I will get more into later on in this presentation. The impact of the Marshall Plan was very significant. Like I was saying, European economies recovered quickly with industrial production increasing and living standards improving. It also created stronger alliances between the United States and Western Europe. In the long term, this also helped the plan. This helped the plan. Sorry, this helped shape the plan. The global balance of power during the Cold War. I'm sorry, I think I said that sentence totally wrong. In the long term, the plan helped shape the global balance of power during the Cold War. Historians also support this idea. For example, historian Ben Stale argues in the Marshall Plan, Dawn of the Cold War, that the Marshall Plan was not only about rebuilding Europe, but also about securing US political and economic influence during the early Cold War. So let's think about it a little bit. Was the Marshall's Plan purely helpful, or was it self-interested? I mean, on one hand, it very clearly helped Europe rebuild and recover from the devastation of war. But if you think about it on the other hand, it also allowed the United States to expand its political and economic influence. It helped contain communism and strengthen alliances that benefited the US. Because of this, the Marshall Plan can be seen as both humanitarian and strategic. The Marshall Plan was a very, very crucial program that helped rebuild Europe after World War II. It was also a key part of US strategy during the Cold War, which aimed at preventing the spread of communism and increasing American influence. Its impact can still be seen today in the strong political and economic relationships between the United States and Europe. Okay. However, as we have seen throughout this presentation, the Marshall Plan was not purely an act of generosity. It was all a very strategic move during the early Cold War. But by providing aid to Western Europe, the United States was also able to strengthen capitalist governments and reduce the appeal of communism at a time when people were very desperate for change. This may have directly supported the policy of containment, which was aiming to stop the spread of Soviet influence without direct military conflict. Instead of fighting with weapons, the United States used economic power as a tool to influence global politics. At the same time, the Marshall Plan contributed to the growing division between East and West. The Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, I think? Yes, the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin rejected the plan and viewed it as a threat to its control over Eastern Europe. This led to the creation of separate economic systems and increased tensions between the two superpowers. As a result, Europe became divided into two opposing sides, which remained a defining feature of the Cold War for decades. Even as we speak today, the impact of the Marshall Plan can still be seen in the strong alliances between the United States and Europe, as well as in the idea that economic and aid can be used as a tool for stability and influence. For all these reasons, the Marshall Plan remains a key example of how nations respond to moments of crisis and how those responses shape history for generations to come. Thank you.